All right, folks, I think we're going to get started here. We've got a lot of people on the line, so thanks so much for joining. We're excited to show you what is all inside firmware 8.4. We've got, as always, Professor P here, Peter West, to lead us through this and show us all the cool new features. Peter, how's it going?
That's awesome. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania right now, inside a massive conference center. So I'm in my Peplink Speed Fusion Rebel vehicle and just enjoying the nice weather up in Pennsylvania and excited to talk about 8.4.
Yeah, I think it's hard for everybody to kind of imagine. You're in a very large vehicle inside of a massive indoor building right now.
Yeah,
So
and
it's kind of hilarious.
I I got my 82G antennas um the day I left for this event, and so I actually drove the vehicle into this huge venue and then actually was sitting on the roof drilling holes and installing the 82G antennas. So it's been a really kind of exciting week as far as driving the Renegade and then installing these massive 82G antennas and then getting to talk about 8.4. So there's a lot of new features in 8.4. And it's relatively soon after 8.3. I was kind of expecting an 8.3.1 or an 8.3.5. Um, I think 8.4 is relevant because we're adding some really good functionality here and some increased stability. I think that there's going to be a lot of stability in the 8.4 that we're seeing at least, and so I'm pretty excited to have been testing it for several weeks now, and I believe we are in RC2, so that'd be release candidate 2, getting ready for GA. Um,
Yeah.
I would expect to see at least an RC3 before it
Yeah.
goes GA. Yeah, but we should be GA pretty soon, I would think.
Yeah, so agreed. I know there will be an 8 point or a RC3, but I think expectations are hopefully that's the one. So time will tell, but yeah,
Excellent.
more to come very soon, and should be full. The cake should be fully baked shortly, but there's lots to
So
talk
let's
about.
let's yeah, there's lots to talk about. So let's dig into it because I know we're gonna try to squeeze this into the 1 hour time frame and not go over this time. So um the first thing is in 8.4, which is a much anticipated. I wish there's like I need like CGI like fireworks shooting off right now. Is bring your own eSIM. Um, this is enabled in 8.4 and activated in InControl 2.13. So it's going to take a few extra weeks here for 8.13 or 2.13 firmware on InControl to be released. But now with 8.4 firmware, we'll be able to bring our own eSIMs. And I've been testing this over the past couple days, and I'm going to do a real demo of this. Actually pushing an eSIM and activating it and showing you the user interface and kind of a little secret that I found that it actually might exist in 8.3, but I'm really happy to have found in 8.4. So we're going to demo that.
Nice. Yeah, the eSIM thing is huge because like you said, it's, the router itself has this eSIM chip on it. And so you need to be able to load an eSIM on there, but then, how do you do that at scale? And so that's where the InControl 2 side comes in. So you can manage that connectivity there and yeah, be able to provision those third-party eSIMs remotely, not have to insert anything. So it to some it might sound small, but from a day-to-day operation
Pretty big
standpoint,
deal.
yeah. So fun
Yeah.
to see them
Yeah,
finally like taking shape.
I was once again at this event, and so I got a tech support call with a customer having a problem with one of the major carriers. And I was like, dang it, I can't drive out. Like I'm at this event stuck inside of a big
Mhm.
building. And I actually just logged in, updated them to 8.4 and loaded a different carrier SIM card right into the router.
Oh,
And so I didn't mean to do that, but it just,
yep.
it worked out really well and convenient, given the fact that I'm kind of sitting up here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think I'll wait for the actual demo to talk more about that. But yeah, I love the troubleshooting aspect too. That's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty neat. The next pretty big announcement here is our Starlink integration. If you're not aware, Starlink has their own router and it uses a technology, and I don't want to screw this up because we're live, but I believe it's called gRPC. Is that correct, Travis?
I'm not sure, honestly.
Okay. Okay. I believe it's called gRPC. And basically it's a programming language that or programming protocol that allows the Starlink router to talk to the Starlink dish, or the modem to start to the router. And so we are really excited to have integrated that technology into our Peplink routers, into 8.4 firmware, which gives us insight into the Starlink and the ability to actually submit actions. So if you see down here, you have this actions, reboot, and stow. And so one of the biggest problems, if you have a BR1 Pro 5G, you got your Starlink plugged into it, and you've bypassed their router, it's not easy to stow, unstow, or reboot the Starlink. Well, now from InControl, remotely, you can stow the Starlinks as well as reboot the Starlinks, and see the UID as well as software version, hardware version, obstructions, and more detail. And so this is an incredible enhancement to the already amazing features inside Peplink's ability to load balance and bond Starlink, but now we have visibility and control of the Starlinks themselves. And I am beyond excited about this.
Yeah, it looks cool, number one, when you can just push that button and see that. Like, there's just kind of a wow factor there. But like we were talking about, the feedback that you get saying like, hey, there's a Starlink outage, and Peter will show some of this, but it really kind of solves a lot of mysteries in terms of like seeing something down and understanding exactly what's going on right away. And so yeah, I'm excited for just, the practical ways that that's going to be more useful for people.
So with the in additional to Starlink, as requested by Starlink engineers, we have added a new outbound policy, and it is a least used policy based on uplink. So if we're trying to load balance multiple Starlinks together, specifically, like if you have 2 or 3 Starlinks or 10 or 12, and you want to load balance your traffic, Starlink had asked us if we could, instead of load balancing the traffic by download traffic, which is the default least used algorithm, they asked us if we could load balance based on least used on the uplink utilization. And so now Starlink, or outbound policies with Starlink, we can have a new outbound policy based on least used on the uplink. And I will demonstrate this where that is in the UI. It's really neat. You just go to least used, and then you'll have a new option that says downlink and uplink, and you can choose, do you want to least used on the downlink or least used on the uplink? And it's once again, this comes directly from Starlink asking us for this feature, and the idea is to optimize utilization when you have more than one Starlink. And you can see here, previously least used algorithm just had the connections, and now we have this new least used mode with the by downlink and by uplink. Another much anticipated feature is that we kind of announced edge computing a few months ago, and it's gaining a lot of ground, especially in the Docker space. I kind of thought it would gain more ground in the KVM space. I love the virtualization. I've created a couple of videos on this, but that we've added the ability to add USB support for the Peplink device for backing up, transfer your Dockers across devices. So now you can back up and use USB for edge computing capabilities. And so not much to really demonstrate there. If you're into the Docker and edge computing, this is a nice now we have this capability. Unless there's more to add on that, but I know it's been heavily requested and fearful that what do we do to back up our Docker images if you have this running on a router? And so that's, I believe that's one of the key motivations behind this.
Yep, having, everybody wants more, there's lots of cheap, affordable, high quality storage options on USB. So people, naturally want that. But I think the other cool thing is this just opens up the audience for folks that can actually now start using this capability. If they have a router that has a USB port, but maybe not that solid state drive inside, now they can plug plug a USB drive and actually get those edge compute capabilities. So I think it opens up more people that can start, learning what they could do with it. It's probably not something day one people will run with, but yeah, there's tons of things you can do with it. So start playing.
Now, I have not tested this yet. I've been on the road since 8.4 and building my lab for the other scenarios. So I'm running on my UBR. Once my router boots back up, I'm going to transfer back over to my HD4 so I can demo on the UBR. But I just need to wait for my HD4 to boot back up here. So I am running on my UBR, but Okay.
Cool.
So anyways, I was asking about the KVM support capabilities
Mhm.
with the USB. I'm sure you already answered that, but for my own knowledge, I guess.
I lost you there mid question, so if you would again, please.
Oh, okay. I was saying the USB support, will it be for KVM as well as Docker?
I'm almost positive it is, yeah, because I know there was I mean, I know one of the customers that really pushed for this feature was using KVM, and they wanted, just more storage and on their virtual machine. So
Okay,
I
perfect.
have pressed play on a virtual machine myself using the storage, but I know there's a customer using it that
Yeah,
way. So
I haven't pressed play. I've played with the Docker, but I have not actually tested KVM yet. So I was and all of my KVM devices have that 1 terabyte NVMe, so it's kind of nice to have. Um,
yeah.
but I haven't played with on like an MBX or anything yet. Um, Something else that comes more of an enterprise request feature from some of our customers. So we're kind of like bundling this in, but we've added VLAN support on LACP. So if you're LACP trunking your LAN ports down into like a core switch or a switch stack, we now have individualized VLAN support. So you can actually go to VLANs custom on your trunk and actually choose different VLANs. This request, I know from one of my customers, came back with 8.2.1, and so it's kind of nice to see that it's been added here as a bona fide feature. But yeah, so the idea here is if we're trunking or trying to get more than 1 gigabit of throughput on our RJ45, we can do something called LACP, which will lag more than one Ethernet connection together. But once we did that, it was a trunk all port. It would only trunk all VLANs.
Mm,
So this new support allows us to customize the VLANs that can be trunked over an LACP lag.
sure, that makes sense. Yeah, and kind of a nice little refinement.
Yeah. Um, so the other thing is we have some NetFlow enhancements. We've added some destination ports for NetFlow, which I'll show you. And then we've added VLAN PPOE support. So the availability to do PPOE over VLAN instead of just DHCP. And so we'll show you how that looks as well. So on the LACP with the switch uplink here, you can see we can LACP Ethernet ports 2 and 3. And then when we go to trunk, we now have the ability to click custom and we can select specific VLAN. So if I don't want to trunk my untagged LAN down to a core switch, but I want to lag those together, I can now choose my AP VLAN and my VLAN 197 in this demo and can utilize that. So very, very nice. With NetFlow, we've added outgoing WAN support. This has been heavily requested with some of our enterprise customers, especially when they're doing multi-destination NetFlow. And so now you can choose your outgoing WAN. If you see that in the right-hand side of the screen here, we now have the ability to choose your outgoing WAN. So you have a particular server that you're trying to do NetFlow on, you can choose a specific interface, or you just continue to let us choose any. And then also we can now monitor a particular source network. So if you only want to have your NetFlow monitoring the untagged LAN, for example, you can then choose that as well. So if you know what this is, you're going to love it. If you don't, it's okay. This is a cybersecurity type of functionality for visualization into your traffic patterns.
I think the other cool kind of tidbit on that one is IC2 is becoming able to manage the NetFlow settings in scale, so that you can bulk
Yeah,
set those NetFlow
yes,
settings on the IC2
you
side.
skipped
So
ahead a few slides.
is it? Oh, shoot. I'm just here to steal the thunder. Sorry, Peter.
So yes, we've linked this up with InControl. So when we announced the InControl 2.13 features later on, I'm gonna show that as well. So it's now being manageable in InControl, which is a heavily requested feature. And
Yeah.
so I'll show you that as well. VLAN PPOE support. I think the use case here is pretty slim, in my opinion. But if you're using VLAN as WAN, we now have the PPOE capabilities, and I believe that's primarily for like DSL and um, uh, like authentication to your ISP providers, right?
Yeah, we've seen some like dedicated internet access circuits, some like virtualized Ethernet type of circuits sometimes use those things. It like you said, it's very rare, uncommon, but sometimes it matters for folks. So there it is.
Excellent. We've also, now I cannot tell you, I believe it has to be more than 5 years that I've been asking for this feature, Travis. I mean, right? I mean, you're talking like 7.1 firmware that we've been asking for more QoS users. I am very excited to announce that we now can support 10 QoS user groups. And if everybody's watching, I mean, thank you, Peplink. Thank you. The ability not to have just manager, staff, and guests, but now you can rename them and use them in different applications and features inside the Peplink router. So now we have the ability to have custom names as well as up to 10 groups. And there's got to be at least 2 or 3 people on this webinar that are just giggling happy right now.
I love this one
That being
because
said, oh,
I think it's a great plug for our summit, because I think the summit really is what pushed this one onto the release schedule. You know, you get a group of users standing up saying, this is why this is important. You know, it's hard to ignore, and you know, there it is. So yeah, it's definitely a good plug for the summit to show up and voice those feature requests there too.
and then since we're talking about the summit, if you just Google Peplink Tech Summit 2000 or 2023, it'll take you to our landing page in November 6th to the 8th. Travis, are you joining me?
I think I will be.
Put you on the spot.
We're working out
Okay.
the details. Yeah.
So we're going to have our Peplink, our second annual Tech Summit in Savannah, Georgia. And this stuff comes right out of this. I mean, the ability to provide real feedback and talking as a community. We're also going to do the PCA 8.4 training, but more importantly, getting together as a community and talking about features that we need to improve our workflows and our capabilities. But yes, these features do come right out of that. And this is definitely not a sales pitch for the summit, so I'll stop it at that. But it was, you know, this feature, it was heavily requested and pushed, and it's nice to see that Peplink not only listened, but they did a really great job of implementing it. They didn't just add the ability to change the names. They actually put it through multiple areas of the QoS functionality, and I'll show that off here in just a little bit.
Yeah, nice.
The other thing is enterprise features, Prime Care update. Certain models will now retain SpeedFusion licensing after its Prime Care subscription has expired. And so this is really nice of Peplink. And that's the only thing I can say about that, right? Something that's supposed to be a subscription, something you're supposed to pay for. Peplink now says, you can have it forever. It's okay. And all I can say is just thank you, Peplink. That's it's just awesome. It just shows the type of company that they are. So thank you, Travis, because you're Peplink. So
I'm here to steal thunder and take credit, I guess.
some additional functionality in 8.4, and you can see why they've changed this to 8.4, because we're just going after feature release after feature release after feature release. We now have our SFC relay with access controls. So in other words, now SFC relay is great for connecting your home network and getting you on board, like letting you use your home Wi-Fi. So while here at the event, I used SFC relay to connect to my home network and actually was streaming the football game for everybody here. And they just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And it looked like I was coming right from my house. So my provider thought I was coming from Gainesville, Florida, and didn't flag my account or say that I was in the wrong geolocation. And so it's just one really simple use case. But now they've added the ability to do access controls, which lets you control which networks you can access on your home network. So it's a great additional security feature for something that was really intended just to act as a bonding host for consumer access.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've now added more applications to SFC Protect. So we've added FaceTime, Google Meet, and Zscaler. So you can now traffic shape and by DPI or layer 7 aware traffic shaping within SpeedFusion Connect Protect profiles. And I'll show those off in here in just a minute. We've also added, I actually don't know what QOL means. Is that quality of life?
Yes, I think that's what that was intended to be. Not my acronym, but yeah, it's just most feature here in the next firmware release.
Oh, creature comforts, like, hey, just a benefit.
Quality of
Um,
life stuff. Yeah, like the PoE on the WAN port. I mean, you could have done
yeah,
it enough way before, but now it's much more convenient.
yeah.
Just
So in previously when I was testing the synergy mode with PoE, I had to do um VLAN and then PoE enable it, and that way I could launch the HD the Caddy the 5G HD1 Pro E on my MBX Mini. Now you can actually just turn on PoE on that WAN port, so you don't need to waste a VLAN license on that.
yeah.
And additionally, especially the Fusion Hub, a big complaint is the Fusion Hub Solo is free, but
Hmm.
it needs to be renewed every year. And so Peplink has made the ability to renew Fusion Hub licenses right from InControl, and that's great.
Yep.
Um, oh, go ahead.
No, we're good there.
Okay, and then finally, like another little creature comfort feature, InTouch has been growing dramatically, at least in my world or in the enterprise world. I've been seeing InTouch adopted and replacing typical out of band management platforms and adding that functionality. But we've had an increase in people asking for, hey, can I have a switch out in the field? I've got an AP out in the field. Can I InTouch using that other Peplink device, and rather than installing an entire router? And the answer now is yes. So with the
Mhm.
latest 3.93 firmware and the latest 1.31 firmware from on the switches and the AP respectively, you can now enable InTouch controls from those devices. So if you have an AP sitting behind a non-Peplink router, you can actually InTouch devices through that AP, and you can also do it with the SD switches. So just in further enhancing that out of band management capabilities of InControl and InTouch.
Yep, I love that because it could be any
Because
vendor's router on that other side, right? And you just plug in a Peplink access point, a Peplink switch, and yeah, now it's going to behave. You've got that same exact in touch capability.
yeah, it's really neat. So SFC relay access control. So we've kind of announced it. So this is sort of what it looks like when you go into your SFC protected and go to relay mode. You would select your relay enablement, and now you get this network access function, this access control. So you can say which networks are they allowed to access, and your VLANs will drop down right here. You can do device access. You can allow incoming devices, and then you can add their serial numbers, and then you can also do allow devices by serial number there. So a little better access control for the devices that connect to your environment, as well as what they can do and access. In SFC Protect, we've also added or enhanced route by Wi-Fi SSID. So with the latest AP firmware, that 393, and the AP controller enabled on the router, you can now do route by SSID, and it'll work on the APs connected to your network. So not just the 20x and the built-in AP, but you also now have, like, if you have an APAX that's attached to your network and you're using route by SSID, you can now that will now work on those external APs to your router. We've also increased Ethernet port status support for various devices, allowing users to view the status of Ethernet ports under status Ethernet ports. So this has sort of been, I don't know, it's been around but not around, enabled but not enabled on some devices over the past couple firmwares. So Peplink is increasing that capability to more routers and adding some functionality, like you can see that the device is up and that it's negotiated at gigabit. So it's just kind of nice, visual capability to see the status of your Ethernet ports. And I'll tell you from remote support, I've had people plug a WAN port into a LAN port often, and I can pull this up and go, "Oh, I see that nothing's plugged into the WAN port. Can you just move that over to the WAN port?" And then they move it over, and sure enough, the network works. So sometimes it's just a nice visual capability to see what's going on. Speed Fusion bonding has been added with the following models for Prime Care. So the BR1 Mini Hardware 3, the Core Hardware 3, and the Transit Mini 3 now have Speed Fusion bonding with Prime Care. And so that's a great way to aggregate your cable modems or Starlink with cellular. We can now bond those together. So that's just a nice little add-on feature. There's no extra cost if you have a router and you have 8.4 firmware and you have Prime Care, you're good to go. You get this extra feature, so that's really nice. We also added support for different priority levels and application queues. And you can see there are a ton of features being added here in this firmware. It's just absolutely crazy. So we added application queues in 8.3, and that was really fun to announce. And I believe when we announced that, Travis, both you and I were like, what, like kind of like the application utilization. And ever since we announced it, we've just gotten tons of positive feedback and companies using it for Teams optimization and video
Yep.
streaming. Our broadcast customers can dedicate application queuing for their broadcast applications, and I'm sure there's tons of other use cases for it. And so, but now it's, can we add a queue but then give it a priority? And so we've added priorities to the application queuing, further making that even more powerful and useful for your business applications. Kind of neat. More features. We've added support for different priority levels in application queues when they're deployed. So now instead of just your queue being listed, you can now have your queue listed in the priority, like I mentioned, and you can see that here. So you have your high priority application queues, your normal application queues, and your low application queues, and you can see how that's applied to the YouTube application. So kind of neat feature there. And I'll kind of show that real quickly if we have enough time, but I've got a couple things I want to show. Okay, InControl 2.3. There's been no spoilers on this conversation about InControl 2.13. So let's dig into that. InControl 2.3 is currently in the in the beta phase, means that it's on Venus. Do not put your devices on Venus to play with this. If you're a partner and you have access, great, but it is beta. We were doing some testing with Venus a couple weeks ago, and it took some stuff down, and customers or partners were complaining. That's what it's for. Do not run your production networks on Venus. It's just a little partner shout out there. This is a consumer conversation, but partners, be aware. Venus is that's how we test it. So we need, and sometimes it will break. If you want more reliable, Earth is the most stable. It's one of the last InControls to receive updates. And so all production networks should be on either Earth or Mars. And then you can run testing on Venus if you have access to Venus. That being said, 2.13 is pushed out to Venus for testing and for allowing for us to demonstrate this. And so we've added inbound firewall rules based on SaaS applications. This was direct partner feedback, or customer feedback, I should say, needing secure inbound connectivity based on these SaaS applications. And so we have now added this feature, and you can see that now you can do an inbound rule. You can do source SaaS, and then you can select the applications that you want to allow inbound. So that's pretty cool. I think that was neat that was requested and then very, very quickly actually added.
Yeah.
Outbound rules. I actually was making fun of this a little bit in my last my PCA training videos that I was making, that Peplink had this amazing ability to do client and SSID and type in the GUI, but it wasn't in InControl. And then about 2 hours later, I got a notification that 2.13 was out, and sure enough, there's client type and client SSID. So Peplink added the ability to do outbound policies based on client type. So I could say, hey, phones follow this policy, smart screens follow this policy. So I don't know who came up with that idea, Travis, but that is really convenient to be able to tag the type of device that's on your network. And if
Yeah.
something's miscategorized, you can actually click on it and change the category. So you can recategorize a device and fix it. And I think that updates a database somewhere, right? Like that actually kind of learns the devices.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure the side of it, but yeah, it's just awesome to be able to say like, hey, smart TVs don't use this WAN or do use this WAN, and
Yeah.
done.
And I'm gonna get into a demo. If you don't mind, I'm gonna connect back to my HD4 to my quality's better. It's booted up now. So I'm just gonna
Cool.
swap back over to my HD4 real fast. It's just gonna interrupt my network.
Mhm. In the meantime, I am just pounding away on these Q&A responses here. So if you've put questions in there, worry not, we're working through them.
Okay, I'm switched over. I think Zoom stayed, right? Are we good?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to get off the UBR because I'm going to do a demo on the UBR, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't on the UBR. Okay. So we've added the ability in InControl now to do access control list, client type, and associated SSID. So what I was saying was the outbound policy rules now in InControl 2.3, we have access control list, client type, and associated SSID is now added to outbound policies in InControl, which is phenomenal because that feature was added to started being added in 8.3, and now it's published in InControl 2.13, which is very convenient. eSIM activation. So we added eSIM support in 8.4, and InControl 2.13 now has the activation. And I'm actually going to demonstrate this and show you a couple of secrets that I found that weren't clearly visible to me. Maybe other people would be, but for me, it was not clearly visible. And so I wanted to actually do a live demonstration of eSIM support and how to activate that. But basically, you go to the router that supports eSIMs, you'd go to settings and device tools, and then you'll see this eSIM activation. So if your router is running 8.4, you're in InControl 2.13, and your router supports eSIMs, you should see eSIM activation right here. Once you do that, you can actually open your camera and scan the QR code, or you can input it manually. Then you activate it and it will tell you that it worked. Then I will demonstrate that and show you how to then choose the eSIMs on the router. We've also added SIM pool by all carriers, which is kind of neat. And this is, I think, really important for like MVNO type operations, right? Where you have someone that can be AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, or any other country, but you have 100 gigs of data. The ability to say all carriers allows you to manage that a little bit better. I would assume that's the main use case here. There might be others, but I just think that that's a good use case. And then we've also added NetFlow support directly into InControl. So now we can push NetFlow information directly into InControl and allow that to be centrally managed. And that is heavily requested. It's been requested for many, many months for me or for my customers. And because you got to log into every router and set those NetFlow options. And so now that is centrally managed right inside Device Manager, right with your SNMP, your logging, your URL logging, and everything else. It's now right under Device System Management, and you can just scroll down to NetFlow and centrally manage your NetFlow options.
These are one of those little nitty-gritty things that when you're managing 1,000 routers, just make it way better.
Exactly. So I'm going to show you a couple of these features. I did go through that enough to give us some time, so I'm glad I get to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you eSIM activation. Now I've already activated Cellular 1, so I'm going to push Cellular 2 right now. So you're going to get a code that you can use to activate, or a QR code. Either one works. This is just what I have. So I'm going to copy that code, and then in my UBR, I'm going to go to Settings, Device Tools, and then I got my eSIM activation. And you can have multiple profiles, by the way, on each cellular. So I could have a Verizon profile, an AT&T profile, and a T-Mobile profile on Cellular 1. So that's something else I learned while playing around. But I'm going to go to Cellular 2, click Input manually. I'm going to paste my code, and I'm going to hit Submit. It does take a second. It's going to push that eSIM and program that, I guess, in the router. So, and you won't see it. There it goes. Profile activated successfully. You won't see eSIM if the router's not online. It will not let you. The router has to be on and connected to InControl for this to show up. So once it's been pushed and it says the eSIM profile activated successfully, I can then go to my device details, settings, remote web admin. And there's two things I learned here. So I'm kind of excited to be able to share this because one of the things that I didn't know, and it's probably been around for a while, but until I started playing with eSIMs, or this is new in 8.4, so maybe Travis can shed some light, but customizing APNs and cellular settings for SFC Protect. If you click on Cellular 2, which I've now loaded my eSIM, you'll see here I've added this new SIM card, BYO, bring your own SIM card A. I can load multiple profiles here. But also, what I've learned is that if on the down here in your cellular options, if you scroll to the right, look, you get all the options for all the different connections you have. So one of the things that I was always worried about was you had A and B, but then how did you program RSIM and Fusion SIM and the Speed Fusion Connect? Well, if you just scroll to the right, I don't know why I've never seen this, and it's so funny, but I wanted to show everybody. You can see Remote SIM, Fusion SIM, Speed Fusion Connect, and then boom, there's my Bring Your Own SIM A. And I can now program those settings if I need to right here. And that is amazing, one. And two, I now have another. I mean, look at all the redundancy I have on a single modem. I have SIM A, SIM B, Remote SIM, Fusion SIM, Speed Fusion Connect, LTE, and BYO eSIM A. And if I added a T-Mobile there, it'd be BYO eSIM B. And I mean, I have more redundancy in one modem than most people have in their entire router.
Yeah. Yep. It's awesome. Yeah, and I mean that you're right. Like that, it's just hard to see, right? That scroll window is unfortunate, but yeah, it's also great because it's there. And it's
Yeah.
you can plug those settings in. So yeah, the UI maybe has grown beyond a little bit what it's capable of now, but yeah, great
But
feature.
now that I know it's there,
All
it's
that
super easy.
flexibility. Yep, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. So really cool. I just really enjoy that feature. And then the other thing I wanted to demo was the QoS functionality. So in that case, I'm going to run over to my HD4. And the slides, it's exciting to announce QoS, but I wanted to show you all the areas the QoS applies. And that's why I wanted to live demo this, not just tell you about it, but also, once again, the purpose of these videos is to tell you about new technology, but then show you how it applies. And so if we go to my HD4 MVX 5G, I can go to my advanced tab. And I can go to user groups down here. And so now, if you notice, a big difference here is manager, staff, and guests are now changeable. So I could say finance, IT, warehouse, guest network, or some variant there. I just wanted to add a fourth. And then you can add, you have a total of 10 here. So you hit save changes. And now under bandwidth control, once I've done that, I can now go to individual bandwidth limits, and look, now I've got all my tags. The finance, which is always going to stay unlimited, so that's there. But now I can do individual throttle limits for up to 10 groups, with the exception of the manager, which I just renamed finance. You never want to throttle your finance team, by the way.
It's usually the other way around.
Yeah, right. And so now I can assign up to 10 different individual bandwidth limits there, which is really nice. It does not affect the group reservation bandwidth. We did some playing around with it. It gets too complicated. So group bandwidth reservations is only limited to the 3. So the 10 applies to individual limits, but not group reservation limits. Additionally, under application queuing, we already talked about this a little bit. We now have the ability to do borrow spared bandwidth and priorities. So I can create a group with bandwidth. So I could have 10 megabits per second high and say this gets 10 megs and it is high priority. And then I could do a 10 megabits per second low, and it gets low priority. And that's the idea, is I can create these application queues, and I give them priority within the application queues themselves. And then once I go to the application tab here, I can add an application. And then I now see that there's my queue, that my 10 megabits high or my 10 megabits low. So if I want to give them 10 megabits per second of low priority bandwidth to my streaming protocol there, I hit OK, and then voila. Now they get 10 megabits, but it's lower than the high, like a high application queue. So I find that really, really neat.
Yep, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really, really nice to be able to manage that and have that capability to better tune your traffic. And I think that just goes into that kind of that I was gonna say exemplary, but you know, that like the key differences between Peplink and maybe some other solutions is that you're really controlling that flow of traffic and data, not just on the WAN side, but really like how it operates inside your network and the priorities that your users get in that ultimate user experience.
Yep. Yeah, there's it's kind of like QoS on the WAN and QoS on the LAN, and there's, you know, different strategies. Speed fusion is kind of QoS on the WAN, right? Traditional mechanisms don't work in 5G and Starlink networks, but on the LAN side, yeah, you send it out the door and the priority, and it just makes everything work better.
So the next thing I wanted to show you was outbound policies by client type. So I can click on my outbound policies here, and here I just have a bonding policy going over Speed Fusion, my Speed Fusion. But my smart TVs and things like that, if I didn't want them bonded, I could actually create a policy, smart TVs. And I've done this, by the way, for a lot of my RV customers that are using Starlink. So that's what I'm going to do here. I can say that the source is a client type, and it's an audio video, which it seems to classify TVs. So source client type audio video, destination any, and then here I could say priority WAN, and I could send it over my Starlink WAN 1. And so I'm saying, hey, if it's a television and Starlink is available, I want you to use Starlink. Like, you know, it's gonna use TCP acceleration. It's not gonna suck up my cellular bandwidth, and it's gonna dedicate more traffic towards my Zoom and Teams meetings and other business applications that might be dependent on that bonded capabilities. And so, client type is a really nice way to just take a classification of device and send it over a WAN or send it out a different path without having to worry about the specific IP address or MAC address.
Yep.
The other one is the client associated SSID. And so I have these SSIDs. I could create another SSID called Renegade Bonding, choose that SSID, and then go send that traffic out my bonded connection. And so then I just say, hey, if you connect to the bonded Wi-Fi, you're going to get bonded. Like, and it doesn't matter what your network is. They could all be on the same network. It's the tag. Yep. So if I'm connected to this Wi-Fi and I'm also on the untagged network, I can still control the flow of that traffic. And that is really cool because you don't have to create a whole bunch of different VLANs, which affect like Apple print, like Bonjour, like Apple and things like that. Yeah. All your devices can still talk to each other, but I'm controlling how those devices use the internet.
Yep. Yeah, I think you summed it up right there. You just make it so much easier to achieve the same kind of experience. And yeah, you don't break printing and all these other things that everybody expects to work.
Yeah. And it's very common, right? It's like, oh, I want to control the flow. Okay, we either need a VLAN tag, right? Or we need a DHCP reserve you. Now it's, oh, let's just create a bonded Wi-Fi and send you out. Or let's tag your device, your smartphones or whatever, and send that traffic out. I've had customers actually use the smartphone for like, especially like healthcare. Like, hey, if they connect a smartphone, send it out the regular internet. Don't let that go over the VPN. And so we've had some really neat use cases where we're able to enhance security by moving those devices off their corporate traffic. We have a few more minutes. Is there anything else we want to talk about, or you want to go into questions? Because we have a lot of questions. Those are the three things I wanted to demo outside of highlighting function. I think we'll do some Q&A. Okay.
Yeah, I think anything anything on the Starlink side is always good to show too.
Oh yeah, let me show that there. Thank you. So, so on my Renegade, I'm inside a building, which means my Starlink is not going to work. And this is really cool because you can see there it says Starlink outage. Like, I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then I can show you how to turn this feature on. So if we go to the my Peplink router and I go to the network tab, and then I go down to WAN. So this is different than the dashboard where you see all your WANs. You can see right here that you have these advanced WAN options. So we've had IPv6 for a long time. We've had DNS over HTTPS for a long time. The WAN quality we announced in 8.3. A synergy mode we announced in 8.3. And now you have Starlink. So Starlink is now, you can click edit and turn on the WANs that you want to monitor with gRPC, and it'll actually check that WAN to see if there's a Starlink modem, Starlink dish upstream, and so from that device. Another thing that Peplink did is we now have synergy over VLAN as WAN. So under synergy mode, you can turn on VLAN as WAN right there. So if you, it's been a heavily requested feature for synergy over VLAN as WAN, and so you can just check that box now and access synergy mode over VLAN as WAN. So those are kind of two new enhancements on the WAN settings within the Starlink. And then once you do that in InControl, you can see there's my Starlink outage or my Starlink connection. Let me drag this over. If I click details, I get my Starlink ID, my hardware version, my software version, my uptime, my fraction of obstructions, my outage, current utilization, and then I can reboot my Starlink or stow my Starlink. And we've had issues with managing a bunch of different Starlinks, especially the HPs and the standards, where we had to unplug our Peplink, plug in the Peplink route, the Starlink router, log into the Starlink router, and click stow so we could pack it up and move it. Now you can stow all your Starlinks right from the Peplink InControl interface. So that's a really nice feature that we've added in InControl 2.13 with the 8.4 WAN activation in Starlink.
I love the mobility detection too, because sometimes you just don't know. It's like, is this my mobility dish? Or, when you start working with multiple
Oh
dishes, these
yes,
details that can just be hard to figure out in the moment. And yeah,
let's see
just
if the
one other
Patriot is
nice little
driving.
detail.
Oh, it's not. It's not on. The Patriot, my Patriot has a Starlink as well, and it's up in Philadelphia, and it might be driving, but it's offline right now. But the yeah, so if you're roaming, it'll tell you roaming. And so so you get more details about the device outside of just booting. So do you have any good, I mean, we have, I see 40 questions. Travis, how many
I
of these?
plowed, I plowed through a bunch and answered them, and then we got to talking again. So let's see what else we've got in here.
Funny one. What are you doing at in Pittsburgh? There's a trees and utilities. I'm at the Mobile Health Clinic Association. So we're talking about mobile health clinics are a big deal for me, and so I'm at the Mobile Health Clinic Association for that one.
So I see, when is IC 2.13 going live? Like Peter said, that is
It
on
doesn't
Venus
officially
now.
have a date yet. So 2.13, you can see right there. It was pushed out to Venus. I don't have a date, a published date yet. I think it's based on, I believe it's going to be based on 8.4 GA is in my assumption.
Show them that little thing that you just did one more time. I want people to see that. I think
Yeah.
that's a very
So in
useful little
InControl,
thing
you click on
nobody
the
knows
little
is there.
notification. If you watch YouTube, right? Click on notification. You can
Yeah.
see the notification bell
Like
up
and
in the top right hand
subscribe.
corner. It will not subscribe you. You click on that, and it's going to give you all of the changes that have kind of recently released and what's going on. But it also gives you the release dates, so we know when software is being pushed. Once again, because there's no release date for 2.13 on Mars and Earth, I believe this is associated to the GA, and it'll be timed with the GA of 8.4 because they're very closely linked. You really can't have 8.4 without 2.13, and 2.13 without 8.4 doesn't really do any good.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that we're going to see as soon as 8.1 8.4 firmware gets a GA date, I'm pretty sure you're going to see Mars and Earth get their dates as well.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's where that always is. And even when you're not in a current, a new release cycle, you can go back and look at those notes up there too. So nice little tidbit. I just wanted to point that out.
Somebody asked a really neat question. Are we allowed to share good news from the Peplink webinars? Definitely. We are announcing this publicly. This webinar will go live, and you're more than happy to post online. The only thing I ask is that when we do these webinars live, I am sharing my information and my routers. When we publish these, we mask out my serial numbers and stuff. So please don't post my serial numbers online. If you do screenshot or something like that, that would be the only request there.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd say there too, like just the way it's worded there, like the free Speed Fusion announcement, I would make sure that you're capturing what the announcement is and not just posting screenshots of slides.
Yes.
Because screenshots of slides really don't add context and they don't really explain everything that's I guess important.
Definitely.
So I would,
because it's not free. It's people that have bought Prime or have a router that has Prime Care, and then with 8.4, and then you're going to keep that.
Yeah.
So
I guess personally, I'm hesitant to post screenshots of slides because it just isn't really. That's not how we delivered it in the webinar, and it's not an accurate representation externally. So if you need materials, based on a slide, ask our marketing department. Those are things that we very likely could change slightly to, I think, really capture that message in a, just a static image as well. So
yeah,
we've
good
got
question is,
and they move quick. So yeah, if you want help, just let us know.
The great question here is 2.13 required for Starlink STO? Yes. 2.13 and 8.4 is required for Starlink gRPC integration. So those two things need to be working together for that to work. Someone asked for eSIM demo. I believe that I completed that. So we should be good there. Starlink power injector?
Somebody was asking how you would do, like, do you have to have the Starlink router?
Oh, so if you have an HP or an FHP, you get a Starlink power supply. And I have a Starlink video that I go over that. If you're running a standard Starlink, you have the router with a little USB dongle, and then you can plug that in. There are non-official widgets that you can buy that bypass Starlink router for the standard that basically injects PoE. And there's a lot of different YouTubers out there that talk about that. And so this just allows you to interact with that. But with a standard Starlink, you would need the router because that is the power supply. So you would need to somehow have a power supply. If you have the FHP or the HP, the flat high performance or the high performance, that comes with a power supply and a router. And so you don't need the router in that scenario with Peplink.
That's a good point. There's a lot of different dishes and combinations of.
Yeah, and I do have a webinar that I released going over all the dishes and the plans and connecting them up. So if you want to check that out under Peplink University, you can check that out.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Click that notification bell. Yes. So someone asked a really neat question: is there a way to have two Peplink routers, one at home and one with me at a different location, and make my home internet the hub? The answer is Speed Fusion Relay. That's so we just talked about that. Speed Fusion Protect Relay allows you to set your home router as a hub or as the Speed Fusion hub, and then your peers or your remote routers can then connect to the home, and it's all done through the SFC option in InControls or in the router. So under SFC Protect, you can set up your relay mode, so that'd be at your house, and then you would set up client mode on your remote device. So you'd set up the relay mode first, and you're gonna, when you do that, like say if I just hit check here, you're gonna get a relay sharing code right there. You copy that sharing code from your home router, and then on the client mode, you have automatic, but you also have relay sharing, and then you put in that code right there. That's going to establish a connection using Speed Fusion Protect from your remote router to your home router. And then you can do outbound policies and a bunch of stuff at kind of a different topic for this video. well, we're running up the end of the hour here, so I will just say we love to answer questions. Travis at peplink.com, Peter at westnetworks.com, and or you can comment on this video when it gets published on YouTube, and we'd be more than happy to answer any additional questions. But otherwise, I hope you enjoy 8.4 as much as I have enjoyed talking about it and the features. And I look forward to sharing your feedback here soon when it goes live. Any final stuff for you, Travis?
No, just thanks everybody. It's great, and
Yes.
appreciate all the testing and feedback and feature requests. So it's just fun to see it showing up, and yeah, can't wait for it to go GA.
You're right. So and follow, I mean, social media, Twitter, YouTube, or Twitter and like LinkedIn, we publish all this stuff. So if you want to know when 8.4 is going GA, just follow Peplink on Twitter. You can also follow West Networks on Twitter, as well as LinkedIn and Instagram, I believe. And we publish that information out there as well. So if you just want to keep up with us on that, we'll talk about it there as well. Thank
All
you
right,
very
folks.
much, and have a great rest of your day.
Yes. Have a good show, Peter.